Today we've gone to chapter 8 of the Sutta Discovery, volume 44, or ST 44.8. And the title of the Sutta, or the Theragatha, eldest verses, named Sona Kodivisa Theragatha. The verses of the elder Sona Kodivisa. And the reference is THA 632 to 644. 632 to 644. The theme here is mental joy of solitude. Now, Theragatha, or eldest verses, is a collection of poems attributed to the monks when they attain arhathood. In other words, it's kind of like an exaltation, a joyful statement, happy statement showing the awakened. And some of these verses are very short, just one verse. Some are very long, hundreds of lines. And the long ones, of course, talk about even their past, how they suffered and how they came to the Dharma, and then how they got enlightened, and so on. There are also the Therigatha, the verses of the nuns, which are also very beautiful. In fact, some people feel that the verses of the nuns are more sensitive, are more beautiful. Well, it depends. You can look through them and see what learning you can get from them. Today's verse, Sona Kolivisa's verse, there are 13 verses. Sona Kodivisa, as we know, is one of those great saints, the 80 great arahats. And in these verses, he also talks a bit about himself and about his own awakening, the teachings that he has learned and understood. We have done, I think some time ago, we've done the Sona Kodivisa Sutta, which talks about how he practiced the middle way. We'll come across this event mentioned in passing in these verses too. Now I will read through the verses and explain to you as time permits. The verses of the elder Sona Kodivisa, THA 632 to 644. The first verse is THA 632. He was exalted in the kingdom in the service of the Raja of Anga. Today he is exalted in the Dharma, that is Sona, who has crossed over suffering. Right here we notice it is spoken in the third person. Of course, it's possible that Sona himself is talking about himself, like writing a poem in the third person, or this could be a verse spoken by the council elders. Of course, there are some scholars who think that some of these verses, or most of these verses, or even all these verses, were actually compiled by the council elders and attributed to the monks. We don't really know for sure, but certainly some of these verses would have been spoken by the monks themselves. On the other hand, there are certain verses which tend to repeat. And in the Therigatha, there seems to be, in at least a couple of cases, where the verses seems to be mixed up, especially the verses of Kisagotami and Vatachara. On the other hand, the apparent mix-up is because the ideas are very close and very connected. So they can be interpreted in different ways, and yet pointing in the same direction up to the Dharma. In other words, if you are not too particular about words, you find that all those verses, even without the names, talk about the Dharma. So we're not here to criticize the arrangement or attribution of the verses, rather we want to know what those verses teach. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter exactly which verses are attributed to which nun or monk. But of course, in most cases, we do know who those monks or nuns are. So here, this narrator is saying that Sona Kodivisa He's a well-known person, even as a layman. In fact, he was serving the Raja of Magadha. And who is the Raja of Magadha here? Well, this is King Bimbisara himself, because at that time Bimbisara has conquered Anga. King Bimbisara, as you know, is the king of Magadha. So these two kingdoms have been joined together. It's called Anga Magadha. So, as you know, King Bimbisara himself is a saint, is a stream winner. So, and then Sona, there are many Sonas, by the way. So here you have his surname or his family name, Kolivisa. And according to commentary, as a layman, Sona Kolivisa was a Kutumbika. Kutumbika is a rich man, and kind of a landlord, and is also a house lord. In other words, he has property in Anga, and he was serving the king. So that's a bit of introduction. He's famous even as a layman, and now that he has awakened as an Arahat, he's well known in the Dharma. Sona, who has crossed over suffering. Right? So once you see this line cross over suffering, you know he's an Arahat. The next verse says, okay, now we have to know who's talking actually. So this time is in the second person, you. Okay. You should cut off 5, abandon 5, cultivate 5 more. The monk who has overcome the 5 ties is called the flood crosser. Well, it's very likely this verse, second verse of verse THA 633 is spoken by Sona himself. So here this is a poem, so everything is kind of brief and compact. You should cut off 5, abandon 5. What is the first 5? Cut off 5, abandon 5. They're kind of very close, meaning cut off, abandon. So altogether you have 10, right? This first set. So all these are in the commentary here. Okay, so first 5 here refers to the 5 lower fetters. The 5 lower fetters, they're called lower fetters because they hold us back, they fetter us like the ball and chain of a prisoner to the world, to the lower world, to the sense world. And the fire fetters are a little bit more subtle. They hold us back in the form world and formless world. Those are the world of a very fine form, formless world, and even more refined form. And those are attained through meditation. So here the Arahat has overcome all those things that hold us back in all these 3 worlds, the world of the senses, the world of form, and the formless world, in other words. Then the verse says, cultivate 5 more. So we have to work to break all the 10 fetters. How do we do that? By cultivating the 5 faculties. The 5 faculties here are, of course, the Panchindriya. So here they balance our practice, in other words. Now, this is especially well known in the case of Sona because his practice was a bit extreme at first, if you remember. We will come to this mention in a while. Okay, so I'll say that a bit more. I'll explain a bit more of this. Cultivate 5 more, or in the case of the Indriyas, in a while. The monk has overcome the 5 ties. It's called the flood crosser. Okay, flood crosser is another kind of idiom which refers to an Arhat. Here there are the 4 floods. Floods here refer to things. The floods are very powerful rushes of water. They can just pull people away and drown people. So this is 4 negative qualities which hold us in this world of suffering, preventing us from progressing spiritually. And these are given in section 2.6 in the notes. This is the revised edition. they refer to what are called the mental influxes or cankers, asava. The first is the flood of sensual desire, kamoga, kama, oga. Oga is water, flood. Okay? Desire and lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasures. In other words, we are caught up with pleasure of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, and do not know how to let go. There's nothing wrong in enjoying them, but we must let them go, in other words. The second flood is called the flood of existence, of becoming, of life itself, especially the desire and lust for the form sphere existence, the form world, these are the jhana world, and the formless existence. In other words, attachment to jhana. Now the third influx is called views, dittoga. Okay? Now the second one is bhavoga, bhava-oga. Third one is ditti-oga, and you combine them become dittoga. These are the various wrong views that can arise. And the last one is ignorance, the flood of ignorance, avijja-oga. You combine, you get avijjoga, not knowing true reality, not understanding the Four Noble Truths. So these are floods that wash us around, and we are caught up with it. We're in danger of being drowned in them. They are called asavas, influxes, because they come through our 6 senses, the 5 physical senses and the mind. So we have to let them go. So the Arhat is one who has crossed over all these floods. So he's safe on the island of Nirvana, if you like. These are figures of speech to show safety, security through awakening. Verse 3, that is THA 634, says, oh wait, before that, there's one more thing I've not explained to you, right? The 5 ties, okay? Now the 5 ties are they're kind of like a summary of the 10 fetters. You can see where are the 5 ties.
Page 81 or 5.
Yes, there you are. Pancha Sangha, S-A-N-G-A, Sangha, and the 5 ties. They are last head delusion. These first 3 are very familiar. Last head delusion, just very similar to great head delusion. Conceit, views. So this is a very short list. This is probably if they're short, they're likely to be older, and later they are expanded into the 10 fetters, Samyojana. So greed and delusion are those very common defilements that trouble us. So that through keeping the precepts, we try to keep down, suppress greed and delusion on the pre-conscious level. Conceit is a very subtle kind of defilement, which is somehow always there if we're not awakened, even in a non-returner. Only the Arhat overcomes conceit. And of course the 5th one is views. Views again, they can be very subtle. Only the Arhat overcomes all the wrong views. So all these 5 have been overcome by Sola, who is an Arhat. Verse 3, the arrogant, heedless monk who depends on external things does not attain fulfillment of moral virtue, concentration, and wisdom. Okay, so here the key word is in the first line, arrogant. Okay, so here now the Pali word is unala in the Pali version, unala, and we also have another old version, a parallel verse found in Udana Varga in Sanskrit. Now this is very interesting because if you compare it on section 3.1, verse 634, in the Udana Varga in Sanskrit, Udatasya Pramatasya, and Pali is Unalasa Pramatasya. So here we see we can guess from this kind of close parallel that Udatta and Unala they probably, very probably, mean the same thing. In fact, when you translate them, the Udana Varga, it translates in the same line, arrogant. Okay, both Udattasya and Unalasa can be translated as arrogant, in the sense of bloated up. Okay, and then you see the second line, Bhikshuno Bahira Tamanaha. It is the Sanskrit version, and then the Pali version, Bahira Sayasa Bhikkhuno. They're kind of close, quite close, but the lines are quite switched around. The Sanskrit is Bahiratamana, okay, whose mind is outside. Okay. The Pali one is Bahirasayasa Bhikkhuno. One we can translate as one who depends on external things. And then the rest are the meaning are the same. Does not attain fulfillment of moral virtue, concentration, wisdom is the same. So this is where we can see how the Dharma is transmitted. In other words, different groups of monks. I mean, India is a huge place, so imagine the monks, they learn all these verses and then they go away. But sometimes the words get a little, they memorize all these words. So sometimes the words may vary a bit, but the meanings are preserved. So what's the difference between the monk, the mind, whose mind is outside, and that mind depends on external things? In essence, they mean the same thing. But when we look at the terms in some detail, we can, in some sense, note some subtle differences. Whose mind is outside, that means the attention is not really there. The person, or in this case the monk, it could be anyone, especially a meditator who's not calm. So his mind is easily dragged around by the sense objects or sense contacts. In other words, it's easily distracted. Okay? And then in the Pali version it says, who depends on external things. In other words, they're always looking for external stimulus. Okay? In other words, they're always looking for some kind of enjoyable experience to the senses. So in that way, they're also distracted. So the keyword here is they are distracted because their mind is outside of themselves, so to speak. It's not focused within, because that's where the real happening of how we sense things in our mind. So we have to watch what's going on, so that we see clearly what's going on, how we respond, how we react to what we see outside of us. Whatever is outside of us is neutral. It's what we make of those things that we have to understand and deal with. This is called self-training. And that training is called the three trainings, right? So if a monk or a meditator, the word monk here means meditator, is distracted in that way, running after external things, then he would not fulfill the three trainings. The three trainings are the traditional three stated here as moral virtue, sila, concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, panya. Here, moral virtue of course means training of body and speech. So if our mind is distracted outside, then we won't be able to really keep the precepts well. We'll be confused and breaking the precepts, because our mind is distracted, and then because we're not keeping the precepts, then our minds are distracted, so we won't be able to meditate. There's no samadhi. Here samadhi refers to meditation, and the deeper aspect is focus, samadhi, in the sense of jhana is not there, and we don't have any clear mind to use to examine wisdom. That's the third training, right? So the mind is distracted, so then we fail in the three training. So we have a very interesting insight into the nature of the three training here. The three trainings, in other words, have to do a lot with mental effort. So it's not like a physical training here. It's a kind of mental effort to train the body and speech, train the mind, and train our wisdom. Verse 4, or THA 635, for what is done is left undone, but the not to be done is done. For the self-centered, the heedless, the mental influxes grow. Right? So, for what is to be done, that means the duties of a monk or our duties as a lay Buddhist are not done. Right? What is our duties as a lay Buddhist? The 3 trainings. So in the case of the lay Buddhist, we're supposed to keep the 5 precepts. And then we try to train ourselves in some level of mindfulness. And then some understanding of wisdom. In the case of a lay person, we should at least work to understand nature of impermanence. In the case of the monk, they go a little deeper. Right? They keep the Vinaya rules. And they practice deeper meditation. And they reflect on all the 3 characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, so that they attain arahathood in this life itself. So, in the second part of the first line says, but the not to be done is done. What should not be done is done. In other words, the rules are broken. Right? So a monk becomes very busy with things about money, things about pleasure. They socialize too much, so that they get distracted, they get into a lot of trouble, distractions. And such a monk is self-centered. The problem being self-centered is that we never know we are self-centered. Because once we know that, then we say, oh, this is not good, I should not be self-centered, right? So when we are self-centered, we do not know that. So this is a kind of a double bind. So then we become heedless, and then all the distractions, all these mental influxes, all these defilements start flooding us. We're caught up in the flood. Verse 5. But those who are ever well intent in the body-based meditation, body-based mindfulness, they do not associate with the not to be done. They are the doers. They are doers of what is to be done. The mental influxes of the mindful and fully aware are no more. Okay? So here, in other words, the practice, in the case of Sona's practice, is body-based meditation. For example, breath meditation, walking meditation. In fact, Sona is well known for his walking meditation, which we mention again in a while. So, if you properly do your meditation, then you won't be caught up in things that should not be done, in the wrong things, those things that distract us. And we'll do the right things which help in our practice or meditation. And in that way, the mind would not be flooded by unhelpful things, by defilements. So the one who is fully aware pushes away all distractions, so is on the way to awakening. Verse 6. Walk the straight path. The straight path, of course, is the Eightfold Path. That has been pointed out. By whom? By the Buddha. Turn not back. So this is where Sona is advising us. Don't give up. Move on ahead. You can stop for a while, but not too long. Keep on moving. In other words, go on practicing. Don't give up. You yourself should urge yourself on. You should attain nirvana. Very simple lines. We should urge ourselves. We don't have to wait for someone else to tell us. We are not cattle. We are not sheep or goats. We can urge ourselves, we can tell our minds, don't give up, practice. Then, comes a point where Sona kinds of remembers something about his past and he shares with us. Verse 7, when my energy was overstrained, the teacher unsurpassed in the world, the one with the eyes, showed the Dharma by teaching the parable of the lute. The lute is the musical instrument like an Indian guitar. And having heard this, his word, I live delighting in the teaching. So this Sona is recording the teaching recorded in more detail in the Sona Kolimisa Sutta, in the Samyutta. But when my energy was overstrained, so this is where, as a new monk, Sona went to retreat and he was struggling very hard to do walking meditation. That one thing is because he led a very sheltered life, so it is said his feet were very soft, very delicate. There was even hair on his feet, apparently. And it is said that King Bimbisara was so curious that he went to visit him to have a look. So imagine him when he has to walk barefoot, and he was so determined until his feet bled, and he did not get anything. So the Buddha came to him and told him to balance his practice, not to put in so much effort but lacking concentration. So this is what he's recalling. This is a teacher came and then used the parable of the lute. In this case, you have a 3-string lute like a guitar. So the Buddha said, taught Sona. He says, Sona, what were you before you became a monk? He says he was a musician. He was playing the lute. He says, okay, you know very well. If the string of the lute is too tight, it will burst easily. If it is too loose, it will make very poor sound. If you properly tune it, make a beautiful sound. So meditation also is like that. So you find here this analogy and figure of music is a very common, very beautiful way of talking about the Dharma. The Dharma is beautiful, it should be well played. So when the strings of the Dharma is properly tuned, the Dharma makes beautiful music. In normal language, it means Sona has to, or rather Sona balances his practice with energy, with concentration. How does he do that? By simply letting go of the effort, too much effort, so we learn to relax. In meditation, in other words, sometimes we should not make too much effort. Just be aware of what's going on at the moment, watch it, be aware of it. Don't put too much effort, in Sona's case. So as he does that, he continues focusing, so his practice became balanced. So it's mindfulness that balances both. Now the other two qualities here are faith and wisdom. Okay, so these 5 are the 5 faculties, or 5 spiritual faculties, which needs to be balanced in meditation practice. You have mindfulness in the middle, you have faith, on the opposite side is wisdom, then on one side, another side is energy or effort, and on the other side is concentration. So these 5 together are called the 5 indriyas, 5 faculties, which need to be balanced in our practice. Verse 8, I practice calm for gaining the highest goal. The knowledges have been won. Done is the Buddha's teaching. So this is like his verse of exaltation when he attained arahathood. What's interesting here, he says, I practice calm, samatha. Okay? Of course, here we should not mistake this to be a separate meditation by itself. It refers to all his practice. Because when he was doing the walking meditation, he was learning to calm himself. So this is what he's referring to. In other words, he was working towards attaining jhana. And it goes without saying, in this case, once a monk attains jhana, he will enjoy it, perfect it, so that he's really good at it, and then when he attains deep calmness, he comes out of that calmness, the mind is very clear, and that's when he applies insight. So here is where you see Sona practicing the approach where he does calmness first, that's why it's meant here, and then when he has obtained, mastered the calmness, he directs it to wisdom, to insight rather, reflecting on impermanence, suffering and non-self. So in that way he attains awakening and all the highest goal, and then he wins all the 3 knowledges, the knowledge of his own past life, knowledge of how other beings' karma work on other beings, and then the knowledge of the destruction of the influxes, the 3 knowledges. And done is the Buddha's teaching. He has attained awakening. Verse 9, for one intent on renunciation and on mental solitude, intent on non-affliction and on clinging's destruction, next verse, intent on cravings destruction and on non-confusion of mind, having seen the arising of the sense basis, the mind is rightly released, freed. Okay. Verse 9 talks about renunciation. Here, renunciation is not just shaving our hair, putting on the robes, and becoming a monk. That is to look at monkhood as a status. Renunciation is an ongoing process. True renunciation is an ongoing process. The point where a person recites all those words to become a monk is just the beginning. So, what is real renunciation here is the process of meditation itself. If you look at what happens during meditation, you see this process of renunciation occurring again, the real renunciation. Because the first thing we do when we meditate is we learn to let go of the body. We silence speech. We let go of body and speech. We renounce body and speech. Then when body and speech are renounced or calm, that's another way of putting it, then we notice there are thoughts. And we deal with the thoughts. And we renounce the thoughts. We put them to rest. We let go of them. Right? Second renunciation. Of course, feelings also is included in the body, right? So we let go of thoughts. And what's left? There's this peace, wonderful peace, joy, right? Then we also let go of that joy. Right? We come out of this wonderful jhana, and then the mind is very clear, then we direct that mind to examine our views, examine the three characteristics, and that's when we let go of views also. And when we totally free ourselves of all views, then we have become arahats. So this is a simple way of looking at renunciation. That means even as lay people, we can practice renunciation on our level, right? By learning to let go of body and speech for a moment, and we sit quietly, whether in solitary practice or meditation, and we just calm ourselves, reflecting on impermanence, even for a few minutes a day. And that is our own practice of renunciation as a lay person. You don't need to be a monk first to practice renunciation. But as a monk or a nun, as a monastic, you can definitely practice renunciation in a more complete, even ideal way. So, if you do this, then if you're able to renounce in this way, then craving, you get rid of craving, you get rid of confusion, then your mind rises above the sense basis. It's no more controlled by all the senses. Then the mind is free. The mind is no more an instrument of the senses. The mind is a master of itself. Verse 11. For a monk who is rightly released, in other words, freed, liberated in this way, in the proper way, his mind is at peace. Our mind is really at peace. In other words, we don't miss those peaceful states once we come up to meditation. Even the memory of this peaceful state is really joyful. In other words, once you attain jhana, you're always happy. If you continue practicing the Dhamma, that is. But once you awaken, yes, the happiness is always there. For there is no more to add to the done. No more to be done. There's nothing more to practice, so to speak. But this doesn't mean the arahat doesn't do anything. He's so used to the idea of sitting down, being calm and meditating. It's come naturally to him. That's the meaning. It doesn't mean he doesn't meditate, doesn't feel precepts anymore. Not true. The arahat is naturally morally virtuous. He doesn't even need to think about doing good. It's so natural to him, in other words. It's just like, we know that when you touch fire, you are burned. So you're not going to try again and say, maybe tomorrow this fire won't burn. It's not like that. You know it, and you're not going to do it anymore. So in other words, here the arahat, he has feelings too, yes, because he has a body, so he's able to feel, but these feelings do not act on the arahat like it does on us, because the arahat's mind is clear and calm. So in that sense, his work is all done. And what's interesting here also, when we talk about the Dharma, I think it's in the Pasadika Sutta, you see that the Sutta also says that the teaching is complete. There's nothing more to be done. nothing more, nothing less when it comes to the sutta. The sutta is complete, so we don't have to add anything more to the suttas. This is section 11.3, the Pasadika Sutta D29, where the Buddha says, the holy life, the well-spoken, fully accomplished holy life that has been well proclaimed, is accomplished in every way, with nothing less, with nothing more. So in other words, if you study the suttas as we have them, the early suttas, everything is there for the purposes of awakening. You don't have to add anything, you don't have to minus anything. No need to learn all the extra later teachings, Zen or Huayan or whatever. This is early Buddhism, is very sufficient for awakening in this life itself. Those people who say it's difficult and so on, they never really tried to study the suttas. They never really read them or know the suttas. They don't practice them, so it's very difficult to understand suttas that way. The suttas can only be understood in one way. First you read through them, find a good translation or read a few translations, and later do your meditation, read the suttas again, and you find you begin to understand in that way. They're not difficult really, because the teachings are very simple. We're talking about right now what's going on in our body and speech, in our mind, and the nature of wisdom. Right, so our next verse, verse 11. For a man who's rightly released, his mind is at peace, there is no more to add to the done, no more to be done. So here's the Arhat. His mind is totally free, nothing more to do. It's like, I guess, now it's on a happy holiday. But he's always there, available to the world while he lives. Just his presence alone, the Arhat. Wherever the Arhat is, that place is blessed, that country is blessed. Because when you meet an Arhat, you feel the peace. And this is the most important thing about being a Buddhist. When you come to a true practitioner, it can be a layman, it can be a monk, the first thing that impresses us is the peace of the person, the radiance of the person. Not so much what the person says, but what the person is. And then when you speak to this person, you feel very happy, you feel very peaceful. So you don't need a good speaker who moves crowds, but the person is not peaceful. When you go up to the speaker as a person, you find he can't even befriend you. It's too aloof, very strange, introverted, and so on. Whereas the true Dhamma speaker is one who has practiced the Dhamma, in some way tasted the Dhamma, is joyful, peaceful, and you can sense, you can feel that peacefulness. And he inspires you to yourself in practice, so that you yourself could cultivate and become free yourself. The next verse talks about the nature of the Arhat. Just as a solid mountain of rock is unmoved by the wind, even so forms, tastes, sounds, smells, touches, and all states, desirable and undesirable, shake not such a one. And his mind remained unyoked. He observes its falling away. So here is a comparison to the mind of an Arhat to a solid mountain, solid rocky mountain. So, as you know, where a mountain is, where there's a mountain is so solid, the winds can blow on any side, even earthquakes, the mountain is not shaken, or not, it's not flattened. And there is a similar verse in Dhammapada 81, right? A-B. So here, the 8 winds don't trouble the mountain in a way. Happiness, sorrow, gain, loss, praise, blame, honor, dishonor. None of these things trouble him. He's at peace with himself. People can scold him or praise him. He's calm. He's happy. He's totally independent of others. Even the streamer is like that, like the Arhat is even more so. So all the Arhat does is he notices things rising, falling away, arising, falling away. He understands the nature of impermanence and suffering. So these are the verses of Sona Kolivisa, talking about his own awakening and reminding us that we too can practice the way and be happy in this life itself. So do read through his verses, and I've done a bit of commentary here to help you understand the verses better, so that you can keep up your own practice in this life itself. Even if you are unable to find good teachers, the suttas are there. Study the suttas with patience and joy, and you'll come to your own awakening in this life itself, at least as a stream. And now let us close this study by a short reflection. Today we have a chance to look at the words and wisdom of a great saint called Sona Kolivisa, who practiced the middle way. We are reminded by the example of Sona Kolivisa also to keep to the middle way. In other words, to set our priorities right, to give enough time to the Dharma for our practice. In that way we understand ourselves better, so that we will walk the path of inner peace and attain spiritual liberation. Such thoughts are very good. Mental karma, with the power of such karma, may we attain spiritual liberation, especially stream winning. We aspire to stream winning in this life itself. Also by this same good karma and many others, to our generosity, keeping the precepts, practicing many other good deeds, may we be well and happy in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us send out our loving kindness to all those who are practicing the Dharma, to all those who are teaching the Dharma. May they be given strength. May they have great wisdom and goodness and kindness, and inspire others to come to the Dharma. Let us also send out our loving kindness to all those people who are important to us, our loved ones and friends. That they may be well and happy too. And finally, to all those whom the Dharma have not touched, that they may see the Dharma for themselves and attain spiritual awakening. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.